The morning sun cut sharp angles across the quiet suburban street as Adam Pierce stepped out of the grocery store, bags in hand, mind elsewhere. He had been calmed for months now, composed in that deliberate way only former leaders understand. 8 years as HOA president had taught him to read situations before they read him. But when he approached his black SUV in the parking lot, something made him freeze. A middle-aged woman with rigid posture and an unmistakable air of self-importance was jamming a brass key into his driver's side door. She twisted it with increasing frustration, muttering under her breath about master keys and resident vehicles. Before we dive deep into the story, let's know if this story grabbed your heart. Hit subscribe right now. More twists, more truths, more powerful moments every single day. Like the video, share it, and turn on the bell so you never miss a story that hits deep. Also, tell us from where are you watching. Now, get back to story. Adam recognized her immediately. Karen Whitfield, the new HOA president, the woman who had swept into power 6 months after his resignation, promising order and accountability. He had heard stories since then. Complaints whispered at neighborhood gatherings, warnings from old friends, but he had walked away from that world and had no intention of returning. He watched silently as she twisted harder, her knuckles whitening around the key. Karen spotted him, and her expression shifted from frustration to accusation in a single breath. She snapped at him to back away, claiming his vehicle was out of compliance with HOA street parking regulations and that she was performing an authorized inspection. Adam smiled slowly, the kind of smile that carried years of experience behind it. He informed her calmly that this was not HOA property. They were standing in a Walmart parking lot. Karen's face stiffened. Rather than retreat, she grabbed her phone and dialed 911. Her voice rising with theatrical panic as she reported a hostile man preventing her from entering her authorized vehicle. Adam quietly activated his phone's recorder and slipped it into his shirt pocket. For the first time in months, he felt that familiar pulse of adrenaline, the electricity that came with confrontation. The game had begun again, whether he wanted it or not. Deputy cruisers arrived within minutes, lights splashing red and blue across the asphalt. Shoppers stopped and stared. Karen pointed at Adam with dramatic flair, accusing him of trying to overpower her during an HOA safety check. Adam handed Sheriff Tom Rayner the key Karen had been forcing into his door. He explained calmly that it was a house key, not a car key, and that he no longer lived within the HOA's jurisdiction. Karen's eyes widened with indignation. She insisted that he used to live there, that the vehicle had been registered when he resided under her authority. Sheriff Rayner stared at her with barely concealed disbelief. He pointed out the obvious fact that she had attempted to open a car that did not belong to her. But Karen doubled down. She demanded Adam be detained, invoking her title as HOA president and claiming full jurisdiction. The sheriff blinked. Over a Walmart parking lot? Karen folded her arms and told him to look up Adam's history, smirking with the confidence of someone who expected vindication. But when Sheriff Rayner typed the name into his system, his expression shifted from skepticism to recognition. He slowly turned his phone screen toward Karen. The display read clearly, Adam Pierce, former HOA president, 2015 to 2023. The color drained from Karen's face. Adam stepped forward and explained that attempting to open his vehicle with a random key constituted attempted unlawful entry. Karen stumbled over her words, claiming she had not known, but Adam cut her off. He did not have to announce his credentials to prevent someone from breaking into his car. Karen recovered quickly, as people like her always did. She cited HOA Ordinance 47C, claiming the key had been provided by the board for vehicle compliance checks. But Adam recognized the key. It was not a master key. It was a standard residential key, the same style used by Greg Simmons, Karen's political ally on the board, a man known for bending rules when it suited him. Sheriff Rayner examined the key and asked where she had obtained it. Karen hesitated, claiming it came from the board, but her eyes flickered with something Adam recognized immediately: fear masked as defiance. Someone in the HOA was running operations they should not have been running. As the sheriff continued his questions, Karen leaned toward Adam and whispered that he had abandoned his community. He had left a power vacuum. Someone had to step up. The board had made changes in his absence, real changes. Before Adam could respond, Karen announced she wished to file a formal complaint against him. Sheriff Rayner looked exhausted and asked what complaint she could possibly file against a man for owning his own car. Karen did not answer. She simply walked away with chilling confidence, as if the parking lot incident was merely the opening move in a much larger game. Adam watched her go, a cold realization settling into his chest. Whatever he had walked away from was now coming after him. When Adam returned home that evening, his sister Mia was waiting on the porch with a pale face and trembling hands. Someone had slid an envelope under the door while she was inside. It was an HOA envelope. Inside was a formal letter accusing Adam of violating Article 12, abandonment of responsibility. The letter demanded he answer to the board. It was signed by Greg Simmons as acting HOA president and Karen Whitfield as enforcement chair. Adam stared at the signatures. The HOA was not just overstepping, they believed he still belonged to them, and they were coming for him. He reread the letter under the warm porch light, something gnawing at him. The article they cited did not exist when he resigned. He had written the bylaws himself. He knew every provision by heart. Mia asked what Article 12 meant. Adam exhaled slowly and told her it had not existed. They had invented it. His phone buzzed, a blocked number. He answered to silence. Then a distorted voice delivered a simple message: "Come back, or we come for you." The line went dead. Mia's eyes widened. She asked if that had been Karen. Adam did not know, but someone in the HOA had just escalated beyond intimidation into threat. Later that night, Sheriff Rayner arrived at Adam's door, looking tired and uneasy. He explained that his department had searched the HOA archives following the parking lot incident. What they found troubled him. He placed a printed file on the table. Inside were meeting minutes showing Greg Simmons pushing for special access keys, Karen proposing expanded enforcement powers, and a unanimous vote approving Article 12, which established mandatory oversight of former board members. They had legally bound Adam to obligations after he had already resigned.
The sheriff leaned in and said this was not enforcement anymore. This was obsession. But the most damning discovery sat at the bottom of the file: a signature approving the measures attributed to Mr. Langford, the HOA's legal advisor. Adam knew the truth immediately. Mr. Langford had retired 3 months before that vote ever took place. The document was forged. Sometime past midnight, Mia woke Adam with a shaky whisper. Someone was outside. They peered through the blinds and saw 3 HOA members moving slowly around Adam's SUV with flashlights, examining it, photographing it, and in front of them stood Karen, smiling as if inspecting property she owned. Adam stepped onto the porch and told them they were trespassing. Karen did not flinch. She claimed a vehicle had been registered on HOA records years ago, making it subject to inspection indefinitely. Adam told her that was not how any of this worked. Karen leaned forward, her voice dropping to something low and cruel. She told him he had left the HOA, but the HOA had never left him. For the first time, Mia whispered that she was scared. The next day, Adam stormed into the HOA meeting hall. He was done staying silent. Inside, Greg Simmons sat at the head of the board table like a king surveying his domain. He smiled warmly, too warmly, and said they had expected Adam. Adam told him plainly that he no longer belonged to the HOA and they had no authority over him. Greg clasped his hands and explained they had changed the bylaws. Adam was grandfathered in. Adam told him that was illegal. Greg's smile widened. It was only illegal, he whispered, if someone could prove it. He slid a folder across the table. Inside were pages of falsified documents, fake votes, altered bylaws, fabricated signatures, the evidence of systematic corruption laid bare. Adam accused him of forging everything. Greg did not deny it. Instead, he explained that the HOA had suffered after Adam left. People stopped listening. Order broke down. They had rebuilt it into something stronger. A community was only stable with control, and Adam had been the last obstacle. Karen stood behind Greg like a loyal soldier, smirking. Not anymore. Adam walked out knowing one thing with absolute certainty. They were not trying to punish him. They were trying to erase him. Back home, Adam tore through his old HOA storage boxes with desperate focus. Documents, drives, bylaws, council logs, years of meticulous record-keeping he had never been able to throw away. His fingers moved through folders until they stopped on something he had nearly forgotten. A locked USB drive. The label read, "Board Restricted. Evidence." His heart raced as memory flooded back. This was the drive he had used during his presidency, containing files he had compiled but never acted upon. Complaints Karen had buried during her rise to power. Misconduct reports on Greg dating back years. Evidence of illegal HOA budget diversions that had been swept under administrative rugs. Confidential police correspondences that should never have existed. Files that could dismantle the entire board.
He plugged the drive into his laptop, and the screen flashed a warning. Password required, 3 attempts remaining. Before he could even consider what the password might be, headlights swept across the window. Mia rushed to look outside and told him someone was coming. Adam yanked the USB from the port and slipped it beneath a loose floorboard just seconds before a heavy knock shook the front door. He looked through the peephole. Karen. Greg, 2 men he did not recognize but whose rigid posture screamed enforcement. Greg's voice came through the door, polite and poisonous. They were there for the item Adam had removed from HOA records. It belonged to them. Adam did not open the door. He told them through the wood that they had forged documents, attempted to break into his car, sent threats to his phone. If they thought he was giving them anything, they were delusional. Greg interrupted him, still maintaining that unsettling warmth. He said Adam seemed to think they were asking. One of the enforcers stepped forward. Adam heard the distinct metallic click of bolt cutters being readied. Mia gasped and said they were going to break in. Adam braced himself against the door, mind racing through options, when red and blue lights suddenly washed over the yard. A sheriff's cruiser swerved into the driveway, stopping inches from the HOA members. Sheriff Rayner emerged with his hand on his holster and barked that this was enough. Harassment, trespassing, everyone needed to move away from the property immediately. Karen's face twisted with barely contained fury. She started to say something about running the community, but Rayner cut her off. "Not anymore," he said. The enforcers retreated. Greg followed, his confidence visibly shaken. But Karen lingered a moment longer, and Adam noticed something in her eyes that troubled him more than anger. Calculation. She had realized he was hiding something, and now she wanted it more than ever. The next morning, Adam found a bright pink notice taped to his door. It was not the usual passive-aggressive HOA memo about lawn height or mailbox colors. The notice declared that failure to comply with the HOA investigation would result in community action. There were no signatures, no legal reference numbers, just a line of smaller text at the bottom that made Adam's blood turn cold. "We know about the drive." He whispered the words to Mia. "They know." Footsteps on the porch made them both turn. Mr. Langford, the retired legal advisor, shuffled up the steps with a face full of worry. His voice shook as he warned Adam to be careful. Karen was not just obsessed, she was scared. Adam asked what she could possibly be scared of. Langford's eyes darted nervously. He explained that Karen feared what was on that drive. She feared it would expose agreements she had made, agreements that were not legal. Adam pressed him. Agreements with whom? Langford's answer chilled him to the bone. Not just HOA people, outsiders.
Mia snapped back that there was no leak. They had been home all day and would have noticed. Greg appeared beside Karen and explained it was merely a safety measure. Protocol required them to inspect the premises. Adam understood immediately. They were trying to force him out of his own house, trying to manufacture an excuse to get inside. Sheriff Rayner arrived moments later, his face dark with anger. He demanded to know if they had staged an emergency to gain access to private property, reminding them that such an act constituted a felony. Karen smiled with infuriating calm and claimed they were simply responding to a safety report filed by a concerned citizen. Rayner demanded to know who had filed the report. Karen said it came from an anonymous number, but Adam's eyes caught something. Her thumb was covering part of the form. He could just make out a small section labeled caller's name and beneath her thumb the initials KW. She had reported it herself. This was never about safety. This was about the USB drive. The psychological warfare began at 3 in the morning. Adam's phone buzzed with an incoming message, a photo. His house, photographed from the street, taken within the last few minutes. Then another photo arrived. Mia, visible through the living room window, unaware she was being watched. Then the text message. "Return the drive and this stops." Adam grabbed a flashlight and rushed outside, scanning the yard, the fence line, the shadows between streetlights. He saw no one, but he heard footsteps behind the fence, retreating slowly into darkness. Mia stood trembling in the doorway. She whispered that they were watching constantly, even now, even as they spoke. Another message from Greg appeared on Adam's screen. "HOA members are loyal. We see everything." Adam's hands clenched into fists. They were using fear as a weapon, trying to break him psychologically, waiting for him to make a mistake. But he was not the same man who had resigned quietly a year ago. This time, he was ready to fight back. He worked through the night with methodical focus, opening old files, scanning documents, cross-referencing meeting minutes with financial records, and buried in the depths of his archived folders, he found something extraordinary: a hidden directory titled KW Overrides. When he opened it, a chill crawled down his spine. Dozens of formal complaints from residents, illegal entry, property intimidation, unauthorized inspections, key misuse, weaponized fines designed to punish enemies rather than enforce rules. All of them had been suppressed by Karen personally. Some were stamped with a note indicating escalation to Greg Simmons. If these documents surfaced publicly, both Karen and Greg would be ruined.
Adam prepared a digital package containing the most incriminating evidence, carefully redacted to protect the victims' identities, and emailed copies to 3 trusted contacts, including Sheriff Rayner. He whispered to himself that safety copies had been sent. For the first time in weeks, he smiled. He finally had leverage. The next morning, HOA members gathered outside Adam's property in a formation that resembled nothing so much as a mob. Karen stood at the front, waving papers above her head. She announced in a loud, official voice that by unanimous interim vote, the HOA had declared Adam Pierce an immediate community threat. Mia laughed in disbelief and shouted that they could not simply invent crimes because they felt like it. Greg stepped forward and read from a prepared statement. Violation of Article 12, withholding HOA property, obstructing inspections, endangering residents. Adam walked onto his porch with deliberate calm. His voice carried across the crowd, cold and clear. He told them they had forged Article 12. He had the proof. Karen's perpetual smile faltered for the first time. Adam continued. He had sent the evidence to people outside their control, people they could not intimidate or silence. A murmur rippled through the assembled crowd. Neighbors glanced at each other with uncertainty. Greg's confidence evaporated visibly. Karen's eyes narrowed to slits, burning with hatred. She hissed that this was not over. Did he really think he could fight them alone? Adam met her gaze without flinching. He told her he was not alone. As dusk painted the sky in shades of amber and violet, Adam heard a sound outside that made his stomach drop. Metal scraping against metal. He and Mia rushed to the window. Karen was kneeling beside his SUV, holding a power drill. She was attempting to remove his license plate. Adam told Mia to call Rayner, but before she could dial, 2 HOA enforcers appeared from the shadows carrying a crowbar and a toolbox. They were not merely tampering anymore. They were preparing to force entry into his vehicle, into his property, into his life. Adam stepped outside into the fading light. He spoke quietly, but his voice carried an unmistakable edge. He warned them that if they touched his car again, he would bring everything he had against them. Karen rose slowly, shadows sharpening her features into something almost inhuman. She told him they owned this community and everything in it, including him. But she had pushed too far. Headlights hit the street, Sheriff Rayner's cruiser, and this time a second patrol car rolled in behind it. Karen's mask of confidence finally cracked. Adam knew the war was about to break wide open. Sheriff Rayner stepped out of his cruiser with fury written across his face. 2 deputies followed, hands positioned near their weapons. He called out to Karen by name and listed her offenses: interfering with private property, obstructing an investigation, violating state law.
Karen straightened her spine and lifted her chin. She declared this was HOA jurisdiction. Rayner barked a laugh devoid of humor. He informed her there was no such thing as HOA jurisdiction over criminal activity. Greg attempted to intervene, stammering something about compliance checks. Rayner pointed at the toolbox, the crowbar, the drill still clutched in Karen's hand. He asked if they typically broke into vehicles during compliance checks. The HOA members who had gathered began backing away in silence. Rayner commanded everyone to disperse immediately. When they hesitated, the second deputy clicked his radio and requested additional units. The crowd scattered like startled birds. Karen, visibly shaken but still defiant, locked eyes with Adam. She told him this was not finished. Adam did not respond, but he understood something important. Karen was cornered now, and that made her more dangerous than ever before. Inside the house, Adam opened his laptop with trembling hands. He inserted the restricted USB drive and stared at the password prompt. Mia hovered behind him, anxious. She asked if he even remembered the password. Adam typed slowly. President_01. Wrong. Pierce_admin. Wrong. 1 attempt remained. The cursor blinked on the screen like a heartbeat counting down to either salvation or disaster. Adam closed his eyes and searched his memory. Karen had once bragged during a board meeting that passwords should always be the last thing anyone would expect. He typed carefully. HOA is not God. The screen flickered. Access granted. Inside the drive, Adam found something unexpected. a folder labeled Whitfield Private, Do Not Open. Mia inhaled sharply and asked if he thought it contained what they needed. Adam clicked the folder. What opened made his blood run cold. Neighbors who had once feared Karen now screamed that she had stolen their money. Others demanded to know if the surveillance allegations were true. Had she really forged documents? Had she really ordered people to break into the Pierce property? Was she really going to jail? Greg Simmons stood apart from both crowds, his face pale as paper, his hands trembling at his sides. He approached Adam slowly, moving like a man walking toward his own execution. His voice came out barely above a whisper. He said Adam had leaked everything. He had destroyed everything they built. Adam met his gaze without sympathy. He told Greg they had destroyed it themselves. He had merely shown people the ruins. Greg sank onto the curb and buried his head in his hands. He looked like a man who had just realized he had been serving a dictator while believing himself a patriot.
Karen burst out of her house with wild eyes and disheveled hair, a far cry from the composed authority figure she had always projected. She screamed at Adam across the gathered crowd, demanding to know if he thought he could take down her board, if he thought he could embarrass her. Adam stood firm on his porch and told her simply that she had embarrassed herself. Karen's voice rose to a shriek. She proclaimed that she had built this community. She had protected it. She had made it safe. Sheriff Rayner stepped between them, his presence commanding immediate attention. He spoke quietly, but his words carried the weight of law. He told her she had not protected anything. She had abused her position, and now she was finished. But Karen was not ready to surrender. She stormed toward Adam's SUV, reaching into her coat and pulling out a brick she had apparently brought for exactly this purpose. Mia screamed a warning that Karen was going to smash the vehicle. But Karen was not aiming for the windows or the body of the car. She was aiming for the rear compartment, where she apparently believed Adam had hidden the USB drive, as if destroying the physical object could somehow undo the digital copies already spreading across servers and inboxes. Adam rushed forward and caught her wrist mid-swing. The brick hung in the air between them, frozen in that moment of almost violence. Karen stared at him with pure hatred distilled into human form. She accused him of ruining her. Adam stared back without blinking. He told her she had ruined herself. Deputies moved in and grabbed Karen's arms, pulling her backward as she kicked and screamed and fought with an animal desperation that shocked everyone watching. She howled for them to release her. She was the president. She was in charge. They had no right. They had no authority. She built everything. She controlled everything. But no one was listening anymore, except Craig. He rose from the curb and walked toward her slowly, his face a mask of exhausted resignation. His voice trembled as he spoke her name. He told her it was over. Karen's resistance crumbled. Her shoulders sagged. Her screaming stopped. For the first time since Adam had known her, Karen Whitfield looked small, defeated, broken. Sheriff Rayner stepped forward and read her rights in a clear, official voice. Karen Whitfield was under arrest for embezzlement, harassment, forgery, illegal surveillance, attempted property damage, trespassing, abuse of authority. The list continued, each charge another nail in the coffin of her ambitions. Neighbors filmed on their phones, capturing every moment. The once feared HOA queen, the woman who had terrorized the community with fines and inspections and midnight visits, was being loaded into the back of the same sheriff's cruiser she had once summoned to punish others. As the car door closed, Karen pressed her face against the window and screamed one final accusation. She called Adam a former president. She said he had no power, no authority, no right to challenge her. Sheriff Rayner looked at Adam and spoke quietly. He said Adam had once possessed tremendous power, and this time he had used it correctly. The cruiser pulled away, and Karen's screams faded into the distance. A week passed. The neighborhood slowly returned to something resembling normalcy, though the scars of Karen's reign would take longer to heal. Adam stood in the HOA meeting hall, surrounded by residents who had once avoided eye contact with him. They demanded change. They demanded accountability. They demanded a complete restructuring of everything Karen had built. The old board had collapsed entirely. Greg had submitted his resignation in writing, unable to face the community he had helped manipulate. Karen's trial was scheduled for the following month, and the evidence against her was overwhelming. Mr. Langford had agreed to testify about the forged documents and the illegal procedures he had been pressured to approve. After the meeting concluded, Langford approached Adam with slow, careful steps. His voice carried a weight of genuine respect, as he told Adam he was a natural leader. The community trusted him. He could run this place again, properly this time, with transparency and accountability. Adam smiled faintly, but shook his head. He told Langford he had no interest in reclaiming his old position. This time, they would build something better, something that belonged to everyone, not just those who sought control. Mia nudged his arm as they walked toward the exit. She told him he had done well. She was proud of him. They stepped outside into the golden afternoon light. Adam's SUV sat in the parking lot, the same vehicle Karen had tried to claim, control, invade, and ultimately destroy. The scratches from her attempted break-ins were still visible on the driver's side door. He would have them repaired eventually, but for now, they served as reminders. He caught his reflection in the window and paused. The face staring back at him looked different somehow. Older, perhaps, but stronger, more certain. He was no longer merely the former HOA president, the man who had walked away from responsibility and tried to leave that world behind. He had become something else, the man who had stood firm when a corrupt system came for him, the man who had refused to bend to intimidation and fear. The man who had brought down the gatekeeper of a petty kingdom by simply letting herself destroy herself. The HOA would never be the same again, and perhaps that was exactly what it needed. Adam climbed into his SUV and started the engine. Mia settled into the passenger seat beside him. They pulled out of the parking lot and drove toward home, leaving the meeting hall and its memories behind. The suburban streets looked different now, quieter, calmer. The neighbors who had once hurried past with their heads down were standing in their yards, talking to each other, rebuilding connections that fear had severed. Adam allowed himself a small smile. It was not perfect. It never would be. But it was free. And that was enough.